This is the GoreTV podcast with your hosts Jill Valentine and Sebastian Castellanos. Let's get into the show.
Okay, so, you know how everyone always complains about public transit? Like, we all know it can be a little frustrating sometimes.
Yeah.
But this Gore TV piece, it, takes it to a whole other level, you know?
Oh, really?
They're calling the everyday bus ride survival horror.
Survival horror.
Oh,
On
yeah.
the bus. That's an interesting take.
Right. It really makes you look at it differently.
It does. So how do they even start to make that comparison?
Well, they start right off with that whole experience of waiting for the bus, you know, standing there on the edge of the road and that faint smell of gasoline in the air.
Ugh, yeah.
And every minute feels like an eternity. They even describe it as being stranded in no man's land.
Ooh, I see. Setting the scene, building that anticipation.
Exactly. It's almost poetic, you know, but in a creepy kind of way.
Yeah. It's clever, actually, how they tap into that, universal experience we've all had, waiting for the bus, never knowing if it's actually going to show up. And that vulnerability of being alone at the bus stop. It's almost primal, isn't it?
It really is, especially when it's late at night or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they really use those feelings, don't they, to set that subtly unsettling tone right from the get-go.
Totally. And then when the bus finally does arrive, oh boy, they don't hold back.
What do they say?
They describe it as this, get this, maw, some urban beast pulling up to the curb.
Okay, so they're going for the over-the-top imagery.
A little bit, yeah, but I mean, think about it.
I've definitely had some buses pull up looking a little worse for wear.
Right, and they are playing on those classic horror themes, that invasion of your space, that feeling of a lack of control. You're literally surrendering yourself to this metal box at the mercy of its schedule, its route, and of course, the driver.
Speaking of the driver, I'm just imagining some of the bus drivers I've encountered over the years. They can definitely fuel a few horror stories.
Oh, absolutely. But let's not forget about the other passengers. Oh man, they have a field day with those descriptions.
Okay, like what? Give me some examples.
They've got the sleeper, the loud talker, the bag hog. They even have one called the mystery smell.
Oh, no, not the mystery smell. We've all encountered that one.
Right. Honestly, it's kind of hilarious how they turn these everyday annoyances into something straight out of a horror movie.
It's true, though. Those archetypes, even when they're exaggerated for comedic effect, they work so well. And I think it's because they tap into a very real social anxiety many of us have. That fear of unwanted interactions in public spaces.
Yeah, definitely.
Think about it. We've all encountered these characters on public transit.
Oh, for sure.
And their presence can be, well, unsettling, to say the least, especially when you're trapped in close proximity with them, you know, with no escape.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's like you really are trapped there with them, too.
Right.
Oh, and speaking of being trapped, they really play up that whole being stuck on the bus thing. You know, the way they describe how it moves, that constant starting and stopping.
Oh, God, yeah.
All that jolting and jerking. They even call it a metal cage at one point.
Okay. I mean, metal cage is a little dramatic, don't you think?
Maybe, but I can see where they're coming from. You are kind of at the mercy of this big metal vehicle.
True. And they're definitely leaning into that whole element of physical vulnerability again, right?
Yeah.
That's such a common thing in horror, that idea of being at the mercy of forces beyond your control.
Yeah, totally.
In this case, it's the bus driver. It's the traffic, even just the route itself.
Right.
I mean, it really plays on that underlying sense of helplessness. And I got to say, it can be pretty unsettling when you actually stop and think about it.
Yeah, for sure. It's like you're just along for the ride whether you like it or not.
Exactly.
And the way they even describe, just trying to get to your stop, they make it sound like this epic journey.
Oh, I bet. Pushing past people, trying to make sure you don't miss the doors opening.
Yes. And hoping no one tries to get off as you're trying to get on.
Oh, the worst. They actually compare each stop to a mini-boss battle.
Which, let's be real, sometimes it kind of does feel that way, especially during rush hour. But it is interesting that they point out how unpredictable it all is. It's not like, say, a video game where you can, memorize the patterns and you master the controls, you know? You're at the mercy of so many things outside yourself.
Right, exactly. And it's that total loss of control that just, it feeds into their whole horror narrative so well. But you know what I find really fascinating about this whole thing?
What's that?
It's almost like they're suggesting that by choosing to view the bus ride through this lens of horror, we're kind of actively shaping the experience ourselves.
Oh, that's really interesting. You mean like we're taking something totally mundane and everyday and like what imposing this narrative on top of it.
Exactly. Instead of seeing it as just like a slightly annoying commute,
Yeah.
we have the power to turn it into this like anxiety-fueled ordeal, you know, just by changing our perspective. And I think that raises some interesting questions about how our perceptions actually shape our realities.
That's so true. Because if we can do that with something as, I don't know, simple as a bus ride, if we can turn that into a horror movie just by changing how we're thinking about it, what else could we be like reshaping with our thoughts?
Right. What if we could like harness that power and apply it to other areas of our lives?
And you know what else? For all the doom and gloom of the Gore TV piece, they really do capture that feeling, that like sweet relief when you finally get off the bus.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like this huge weight lifted off your shoulders.
Right. It's such a stark contrast. Like 1 minute you're crammed in that confined kind of chaotic space, and then the next, bam, you're stepping out into the open air, back in the world.
Back in control of your own destiny. And everything just seems a little bit brighter, you know?
Yeah.
A little less intense.
Totally. Like a pressure valve releasing or something. Just a total sensory reset. It's kind of funny, though, when you think about it. Something as simple as a bus ride can really make you appreciate those little things, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Like just having a bit of personal space.
Yeah.
Or being able to choose your own background music.
Right. You're not stuck with someone else's questionable taste in tunes.
Exactly. It really is all about perspective, isn't it? Because, I mean, the bus ride itself, it hasn't actually changed at all, but our whole experience of it, it's completely reframed just by that short escape.
I think that's a really good point.
And it kind of makes you wonder if maybe we should be looking for those little escapes more often, you know, even in other parts of our lives.
I'd like that.
Like those moments that can help us to just reset and appreciate those things that we usually take for granted.
It's so easy to get caught up in the everyday grind and forget to look for those moments, isn't it?
It really is. Well, I think that's a great note to end on.
It is.
The bus ride. Is it a horror movie in disguise or just a mundane part of our day? Guess it really all comes down to how we choose to see it.
There you go.
All
That's
right.
the real takeaway.
So next time you're on that crowded bus, you know, shoulder to shoulder with the loud talker, bracing yourself for the mystery smell, just remember, you have the power to choose your own adventure.
Maybe it'll be a thriller, maybe a comedy, maybe even a romance. Who knows?
That's right. The possibilities are endless. And hey, you might even stumble upon a moment of unexpected humor or even some deep insight about yourself along the way.
Now that's something to look forward to.